This is a co-stream that Brian White from Future Aza and Nick Gibbs from Investing Against the Grain. We do this every Wednesday. So today's topic is what's going to happen to Tesla's stock. When are we going to be able to get back to the all-time high, which was, I think, $423. So I just put $423, wasn't it? 420? Can't remember now. Something like that, very close. When are we going to get there again? There's a lot of events that happened this weekend and just the last day or two that is really big deal. These are things that are going to change the conversation. You have Elon Musk talking about the master plan part 4. You've got conversations about the largest data center that they're building in Memphis. Dell announced that they will have a Dell AI computer in partnership with X and XAI. When do you think Tesla will get to 420 again? Let's start with that. Why don't we start with you, Nick? Tell us what you're thinking about that.
Oh man, I was hoping to go second on this one. Yeah, so what do I think for 420? So this is the way I see it rolling out in the next, call it 6 months. I think if we can get to July 2nd and we have a better delivery numbers than expected, or even actually just even around what was anticipated, I think the stock will be happy with that. We won't get hit the way many people think we're going to. Going into earnings at the end of July, I think that will be a big catalyst because I'm of the opinion that margins are going to be just as good or better than what they were. And I think there's going to be a lot of questions about 8.8, and there's going to be a lot of carrots that Tesla and the team are going to be putting out there to get people excited about. So much like I predicted last quarter, I think after this quarter, we're going to have another bump in the stock. But I think that's going to be pulling in a lot of, or shifting left a lot of the gains from 8.8. So I think that gets us over 200 before we get to 8.8. So then the big question, right? How do we get back to all-time highs? Well, I think that's really going to be dependent on what we see coming out of 8.8. If we have, oh, wow, we got some greatness that just joined us. If we get out of 8.8 with clarity on two things. One, how is Tesla viewing the business model for robotaxis? And two, some sort of timeline. I'm not saying 8.9, but give us a range in which we think the network will actually be available to consumers. Maybe they say second half of 2025. Maybe they say first half of 2025. Maybe they tell us that they're going to start with a pilot at the end of this year or mid of next year. Give us some way to nail down a timeline. And I think they probably will do something of the sort, project it out. And they'll probably caveat, this is based on what we see right now, the trajectory. But as we get up to those dates, and if we start seeing that be material, that is when I could see us running back towards all-time highs. But it needs to be something that's within, throwing distance where we can start to actually recognize this revenue. I don't think we need to recognize revenue. We need to be in eyesight of it. So that's kind of how I'm thinking about how we get past 200 and then how we get to all-time highs.
I would add to that. Exactly right. This is my thought is if we can see what it is, we don't have to necessarily have it in our hands. We can start thinking about it. If we see licensing, if we see a path to bots being actually deployed, we know that there's customers, that could be something. If we see the expected completion date looming for megapacks in Shanghai. If we see a plan to start building things in other locations, even expanding in Berlin could do the trick. Getting a lot of clarity on 8.8 is what we're hoping for, of course. But also just getting even FSD trials rolled out in more places could do it. That's going to be revenue. I don't care which market it is, somebody will buy it or subscribe to it. And especially if they subscribe to it, Wall Street loves recurring revenue. It's a great, reliable metric that they look for. So I would say that, and again, I don't know about all-time highs, but in terms of things that could bump the stock, all of those would work. And if we do see a higher than expected number on production and deliveries, that would help us well, because we've seen some price cuts in some markets. We saw that with the revision of the British Columbia tax incentive, that One model, I think, dropped the price so that it could reach, but the Model Y did not. But we've seen price cuts in other places, and those are, from people I've talked to, not necessarily going to hit the margin as hard as they would with some of the other manufacturers, because Tesla's relentless pursuit of pricing improvement has been successful and continues to be, especially as they scale. Larry, what do you think will get us back to all-time highs over the next perhaps months or year?
Yeah, before you answer, Larry, I want to share this is what happened to the stock since the annual shareholder meeting, where we finally got the Elon Musk compensation plan. Looked like it's at least much likelihood that it'll be resolved. And yet there was no pop, right? This overhang that people were talking about didn't happen as much as we all expected. So what's your thinking of what might get us back to 420s, the all-time highs?
Well, I don't think Tesla announcements or Tesla Autonomy Day is going to do it. If anything, I think the share price may even drop after Autonomy Day, simply because that's the classical process. Look, the stock price right now is at a point where we're looking for about $1 a share a quarter earnings. We're a little ways away from that. In this quarter, we're going to be quite a ways from that. So I think that while we are cognizant of what is going on within Tesla, understand the impact of Optimus, we understand the impact of FSD, we understand the impact of the semi going into production next year, we understand the impact of the China factory. Wall Street are in a show me mode, and they're going to wait until we see actual revenue come onto the top line, and margins come into the bottom line. I think that's reasonable, but it really leaves open an incredible opportunity for those who believe that all of these things are going to come to pass, as I do, and just accumulate, because this has got to be the sale of the century. I mean, if we see FSD maturing next year, as I believe it is going to, if we see the bots go on sale by the end of next year, which looks eminently possible, if we see, FSD, the Robotaxi products, as I expect them to be at least 2 products, possibly 3. Herbert, I think you're going to lose your bet with me. I think that the margins on the new products and the lift that they're going to give are going to be quite amazing in terms of operating margin. So I'm very bullish, midterm, medium term, end of 25 onwards. But this is a refrain I've been bleating about for years now, for the last year and a half, and it doesn't get a good reception from the Tesla bulls, I'm afraid. But people should see this as it is. It's a great opportunity.
Herbert,
Yep.
can I steel man a little bit here, Larry?
Sure. So, I'm probably more wrong than I'm right, so feel free.
Well, I think that's nature for all of us. So I think a lot of people are of your same mindset, Larry, where, I know far as I was talking about, Gary Black's talking about, you've been talking about it for a long time, kind of this show me. But what I would kind of steel man the other side is to say the market hasn't been in a show me. For example, the market's been trying to get ahead of these rate cuts, these 7 rate cuts that are supposed to come, and now we might get 1, and the market's still trying to hang in there. The market's been trying to get ahead of this AI play, yet tell me a company that's being profitable on AI, and don't say NVIDIA, because I don't believe they're an AI company. They're a hardware tangential company. But what company is delivering AI for profit? Apple finally got some mojo under the stock. Why? Well, because they had a demo of something that people still don't actually know how they're going to monetize. So it seems to me like the market actually just wants to see what is the product, how's it going to work, what's it going to look like, what's it going to feel like, and then we'll give you some recognition. So I'm not completely disagreeing with what you're saying, because you can see NVIDIA is showing for sure revenue, and the market is heavily rewarding them, biggest company in the world. But I don't think the entire market is going to show me. I think Tesla is being suppressed right now because there's so much noise. There's so much negative noise and headwinds, whether it's the media, whether it's Elon, the many lawsuits, even this Delaware thing. It's not over. Sure, we voted, but it's not over yet. We don't actually have conclusion on that. So maybe not a complete steel man, but just I don't know, just to kind of paint the broader picture of how I see things.
Well, you may be right, but firstly, as far as AI revenue is concerned, I will tell you that Microsoft is actually showing real revenue from their AI work, and I know this because I have companies that work with them and are paying them millions of dollars for absolutely nothing. So they're actually cooking very well. OpenAI have had a huge revenue burst.
Yeah.
Huge revenue burst. But in general, what you say, I'm aligned with. But, we are back in 2018. Really, we're back in 2018. And Elon said it best at the end of last quarter. He said, look, we're between waves. Actually, it was the previous quarter, I think they said, we're between waves. And we really are between waves. I don't think the market is going to buy what Tesla is selling until those revenue numbers and margin numbers come in. And that's, I think one would be wise to think that way. If I'm wrong, great surprise, very, very happy surprise for all of us. If I'm right, it means that there's a huge opportunity for, dollar cost averaging a fairly serious buy into the late 25 period, because when that pops, look, people buy Tesla stock when it's high. It's crazy. I was at TeslaCon and I pleaded with everybody, do not buy on margin. Just be aware that there's hard times coming. And I have friends who lost tens of millions of dollars. Some folks actually lost everything. So all I can say is when stocks are down, when a good stock is down, it's a great opportunity. When a great stock is up, be aware. That's all I have to,
Herbert, can I ask Larry one quick question? So quick question, Larry. So let's say that you end up being right, that Tesla won't reach all-time highs again, 420, whatever number you want to put on it, until we start seeing revenues and all that. Okay, so same question that Herbert asked then. When do you think we will reach that? So when do you think the numbers will start to show?
I think mid to late 25.
So does that mean you think we'll have Robotaxi at that time coming out? And
I think Robotaxi is going to roll out late 25. I really think we're that close. Everybody thinks that close means next month. No, it doesn't mean next release, and it doesn't mean next month. It means next year sometime, and probably later than earlier next year. I think we're that close, and I think we're going to see it happen. And this is a very short period of time, guys. This is it's like 2018 and the end of 2019, we went through the roof. So,
yeah, I actually agree very much with everything you're saying, Larry. So what happened this weekend? Let's break it down to see how it is going to impact the story stock of Tesla, the margins and revenue of Tesla, right? So what happened this weekend was you've got Elon Musk. Here we go. Elon announcing that he's going to start working on Master Plan Part 4. So this is obviously a plan. Never anytime he's ever announced this, nothing's ever happened to the stock. I'm not saying the stock should go up at all. Right. However, this particular plan is very likely associated with, aligned with his new compensation plan. So when they announce a new compensation plan, could happen this year, could happen next year. I don't know when that will come out, but he's thinking about this already. He's making these plans about what's going to happen. He's been talking a lot more about the bots. He said that it's going to be 10 times more common than cars. And he's already talking about $25 trillion market cap for that. Bots will be offered both as rentals and as well to buy. He's now here sharing with you that he's thought through already the business model, how they're going to be priced. He even shared that he thinks that the price of a bot will be around $10,000 at some point. We'll sell it for $20,000 and so forth. But the other thing that happened was the Model 3 long range now qualified for the $7,500 federal tax credit. This is the upgraded model that's now even more affordable. So these things, small, not giant, not big moves, but this is now the one thing that's happened in the last few days here, where this could impact margins, sales that can happen. What's your expectations now that you saw this? Because it sounds like when he said at the earnings call, I actually think Q2 will be better than Q1. I still think we'll do fine by the end of the year. So we're not saying that it's going to be jump in margins or anything like that, but at least that's the baseline, right?
Well, I want to jump in real quick and say Tesla needs to get rid of the 5-year gas savings estimate, because it's so wildly different for every buyer. And especially if you're in an apartment or somewhere where you rely on public charging, there is no gas savings. When you get around 30 to 40 cents per kilowatt hour, you're right back in the $3 range for gas. And a lot of people find that frustrating. And it would be great if we could see the federal tax savings. Some people can't do $7,500 off in their head. It'd be nice to be able to toggle that without the gas and maintenance savings, because that is almost everyone gets the federal tax incentive, but not everyone gets the gas savings. But I do think that as these price cuts, it is effectively a price cut. Will spur more savings, more production deliveries, and I think that will have a small impact on the stock, just as the numbers reflect better sales.
Yeah, I think the these events that Herbert has mentioned and improvements in the buying experience that Brian mentioned, I think these could have some impact on revenue and margin. But at the end of the day, these aren't truly catalysts. Right. I mean, when we talk about Master Plan Part 4, we're seeing the evolution of Elon's thinking in real time, or at least in somewhat delayed time, as he takes his ideas and then they get it worked into presentations. These have never been catalysts. I mean, these have only impacted the stock negatively. The further out Elon thinks, the more imagination he puts into his ideas, the less it attracts Wall Street. Yeah. And that's that's really our advantage. That's our value add here. We understand it, we get it, we see it. The only problem is we don't understand time. We just don't understand that these things don't happen. That they take time to play out. And the problem with Elon is that he looks forward 10 years. He speaks as if it can happen tomorrow. And that's what kind of gets everybody tied up in a knot.
Yeah. Looks like that we were at 298 July of 2023. That's, just even barely going to hit 300, but that was July of last year, almost a year ago. So what has happened since then to now? What is holding the stock for even getting back to 300? Things have tremendously improved in all aspects.
No.
And then, the most important thing was the lawsuit that then was now semi getting in a proper direction, right? Not resolved, but heading in the direction.
None of that was counted. Mm-hmm. What counted was dropping from $1.60 a quarter of earnings to this quarter is going to be less than 80. That's what happened. We think all these announcements happened. We think all these events happened. That's not what happened. What happened is we went from $1.60 anticipation, and now we're anticipating less than 80 cents.
For next
And
year.
that's what
Yeah.
happened.
Yep.
And so people lose sight of we Tesla bulls lose sight of that because we understand the company so well, and Wall Street doesn't understand the company at all. Wall Street are looking at one thing, the numbers. And they're not looking at the future numbers, they're looking at the past numbers. If the stock had continued its rise in earnings, then they would be looking at future numbers. Right now, they're looking at a share price of $180 odd, and they're looking at earnings of less than $2.50 a year. That's incredible. That's a pretty high share price. And so we have to talk about, and Nico, this is where this is why I'm so focused on the numbers. When we see earnings jump to the $2 mark, the share prices go to 400. But until that happens, the share price is going to loiter down at 180 and less.
Yeah, fair comment. So when do we expect that? What happens when they announced that there's going to be a new vehicle? Elon said it's going to be first quarter next year. It might actually be announced or in production, could be last quarter of this year. Now, that's not going to generate earnings, but it's going to show you that we're in a brand new target segment that we're now going to start selling a vehicle in that segment. Do you have to wait for earnings to appear before the stock will jump? Or this could be, hey, we've got a brand new company, a brand new product being sold, and it looks amazing, whatever it is, in the end of this year.
Well, I have a
If
question
it
for
happens.
Larry. I have a question for Larry. My question would be, what could move the stock price up that is not a physical product, that is not real dollars in the door? Is there any announcement or any sentiment shift? I mean, interest rates going back down, I think, would be something beyond the company's control that would move it. But can you suggest other things that might also have an impact like that? Any announcements? Any new products, any new factories just on the horizon, do you think would have any impact? A partnership for FSD deployment in the future, would that do it?
That would definitely impact the stock. If Ford came forward and said, we are going to adopt FSD, we're in a different ballgame, an entirely different ballgame. So you're right, Brian, there are some announcements that could well be catalysts. And just as the Ford supercharging announcement was very galvanizing, as was the Hertz announcement, an announcement of a real auto company, not a SPAC-based auto company, but a real auto company announcing partnership on FSD would change the game very dramatically. And it can't be a Baidu. It has to be BYD, or it has to be SAIC, or it has to be Volkswagen, which probably won't happen. But that's the kind of announcement that could well have a galvanizing impact on Wall Street.
You know, I think we need to dive a little closer, deeper into that, because I myself am trying to figure this out, right? Why did the supercharger announcement with Ford acted like a catalyst and made the stock jump? That's because it looked like that it was capitulation by the OEMs. Prior to that announcement, everybody said the competition's coming, Tesla's going to lose market share in the future. This solidified Tesla's lead, and very likely it was capitulation by the OEM saying, hey, we are not going to be able to, do this on our own. We need to partner with you. It wasn't because there was revenue and margins expected from the supercharger business. I think we all agree. Some of us think that it's going to be massive. That wasn't the reason the stock jumped, right? Now, when we're talking about partnership with a license for FSD, that does come with a little bit of revenue. But the reality is that if they make the announcement today, it could be 4 years or 5 years before that partner could actually generate revenue and start selling their cars. However, it could also be this capitulation. It means that Tesla is now going to change the game of transportation from selling cars to renting cars to being a fleet to selling cars. But that's why it's interesting to see what might happen there.
I would say that on the sentiment shift, Hertz announcing their intention to buy 100,000 cars, even though they ultimately only bought 50,000, gave a big jump.
Yeah, I mean, the issue of the sentiment shift, if there's a Ford announcement or a major OEM announcement, hasn't to do with money. It has to do with recognition that FSD is real. Right now, nobody outside of our world believes in FSD. Nobody. I mean, there's a lot of skepticism even within our community, but outside our community, it's too much of a reach for them to really to assimilate this idea. And there's too much FUD around. I mean, we have to recognize there's a lot of FUD around. So at the end of the day, the Wall Street analyst said, look, I can't figure out whether this guy's right or that guy's right. It's too much for me. Let me look at the numbers, and I'm going to just base myself on the numbers. I mean, but if Ford announces that they're going to do FSD, suddenly there's a whole new cachet on the stock, a whole new cachet. And it doesn't just have to be FSD. It could be the 48-volt system. It could be, one of other areas, but it has to be recognition. Now, FSD is going to be a jump. Other technical partnerships are going to be a bump. There's a big difference between a bump and a jump in my mind. I can't define it exactly.
Mm-hmm. Nick?
I think this just kind of goes back to what I was saying before. It's we don't need to see the numbers on the bottom line. I don't think it's a show me market right now. I don't think we need to see revenue. I don't think we need to see profits right now. We just need to understand what it actually looks like. We have no concept of what Robotaxi would look like. We have no concept what the FSD subscription would look like. We have no concept of what the next gen vehicle is going to look like. We don't know when that's going to start. We don't know anything other than SYX3 Cybertruck energy. That's all we know, and the market is blind to it. I'm convinced of this. I don't think. I'm not saying everybody's going to get into the stock right away just because of certain announcement or certain projections or clarity, but I do think that just like everybody wants to be in the market before rate cuts happen, people piled into the market. Just like everybody wanted to get into NVIDIA ahead of each quarter, as we know that there's blowout after blowout. They did. Just like everybody jumped into Apple once they knew what Apple was going to do with AI, they did. I'm pretty convinced on that. I just think Tesla needs to be ready to open up their hand. But right now they're not ready to open up their hand, show their cards. And I don't want them to till they're comfortable. I'd rather wait another year and a half. If that's when they're ready, then that's when they're ready. But I trust that when they're ready, they'll show us and it'll be line of sight. And I also, frankly, I think they're trying to pivot to less of a 4-year outlay or a 1-year outlay. I think when they launch something or announce something, I think they want to be ready to deliver it. So
there was a comment just a minute ago saying, why would Ford partner with Tesla when they've got their own functional level 2 system? And that's not the same thing. Their level 2 system cannot scale to level 3, 4, or 5 because it doesn't have the compute, it doesn't have the training, it doesn't have it doesn't have any of the things. It's like saying something has two wheels. Why can't it be the fastest motorcycle ever? Well, that's a bicycle. And that particular bicycle still has training wheels on it. It's like looking at the Mercedes and saying it's got level 3. All they have to do is just expand what it can do. And the reality is you cannot expand what it can do. The hardware is incapable. So Ford could be, in my opinion, one of the more likely candidates to adopt FSD. Jim Farley was the first to push his company to adopt the NACS charging standard, and that's moved the entire industry over time. And I wouldn't be surprised to see Ford. They've had other AI projects and spent an absolute fortune doing it, and they have, had to shift gears before. This wouldn't be a more radical shift.
I agree. I think that I don't expect an announcement from Ford until we get to quite a significant advance in the current FSD. I mean, we're on track to continually improve FSD, and it'll be interesting to see if that improvement accelerates. And if it does, I think early next year or mid of next year, we're going to see an announcement from a third party. But until that happens, Nico and I are going to see it different. I think that we are in a 2018 period that the kind of FUD we're getting tastes like it, sounds like it. In fact, there was this guy, Brad Munchen, who posted about how few service centers there are today. Well, the same guy is the guy who posted about how Tesla was going to go bankrupt from all the warranty claims that they were going to have to face, and he did this calculation, or he had a friend do a calculation that showed that Tesla was going to go bankrupt from just the warranties. I did a research. That spurred me to do research. But I discovered Tesla has this massive warranties reserve that they could start drawing upon. But the point that I'm trying to make is the FUD is a function of the state of the market and the state of analysts. It feeds them, but it's also a reflection of them. And so
go ahead, please. Well, I just wanted to say that Brad should be recognized for the dishonest joker that he is. His identity has been hidden for years. There are a couple people who know it, but they won't disclose it because they're better people than he is. And he claims to be a hedge fund manager in the auto industry. He claims to be in Ireland. None of those things are true. It's not even his real name. And of course, all of his predictions are wrong. He's very dishonest, and this is all intentional, and he deserves nothing but scorn. And it's unfortunate that he makes people believe that there's value to what he's saying because it sounds real, it sounds right, it sounds factual. But then, as you discovered, Larry, the second you dig into it, it all falls apart. And so much of the fear, uncertainty, and doubt we see posted fits that exact model. And someone's, in each case, there's somebody behind it, whether they're personally working for the competition, whether on Saturday we had a gentleman come up. The first question for the Q&A for the whole group was, Elon admitted that LiDAR, the Tesla attorney said that LiDAR is critical. When will Elon be honest for once? And then trembling, he ran off before we could finish answering because he knew he was in the lion's den. And fortunately, someone followed him to the parking lot and was able to determine that he is heavily invested in LiDAR. And so he believes everything he reads that says LiDAR is the only path. And that's what we're up against.
So, okay, as a Tesla investor, right, what I'm trying to do is understand what is the way that the market views Tesla. And I can see both your opinions, right, how they're right. So let's just want to break it down a little bit because the stories that everybody's saying makes sense. It makes sense that what you're saying, Larry, that the stock is really, going to be impacted by the earnings and the margins fall, the earnings fall for the next year. That's what it is. then people say, well, the reason why the stock is flat and has been held back is because of Elon's compensation package. Elon's going to leave. That was the FUD of the day that they've been hammering home for the last 6 months. Many of us Tesla bulls even start believing it because, Elon's comment that he might want to take robotics AI somewhere else if he doesn't get 25% voting control. Meanwhile, his actions in the last 6 months have been daily. He comes out and makes a comment about Tesla. He's been so focused. He's making, wartime CEO moves in the company to make sure that it survives. Now you see he's continuing to do that. So was this really, it's an overhang on the stock? This idea that Elon's may not be part of the company. Well, now that he is, or now that he's, much more likely going to get his compensation plan, he's more likely to get a new compensation plan. Stock bumped a little bit, but not a lot. And then the story is still back to, you got to get your earnings. That's really the reason. Meanwhile, all these other reasons come up. There's all these different reasons people come up and say, that's why the stock is down. It's hard to understand what really is impacting it. That's why
you don't have to guess this stuff. Just trace the quarterly earnings against the stock price, and you'll see the reason. I've just discovered, as I see the remarks about my mic, I didn't set my mic up when I came in. Give me 1 second, guys. I'll just fix that.
Yeah.
Well, so while Larry fixes that, I kind of agree with Larry what I think he's about to say, that why is the stock down? I think it's pretty clear. Tesla growth has slowed. It's very evident. They're selling less vehicles. Margins were down. Interest rates are higher, right? Literally everything the Fed wanted to do to slow the economy, the whole world did, and it's working. The economy is slowing. So that makes sense. And during those times, those periods of time, people aren't exactly risk seeking. They're not exactly in the hopium type of spirit. And really, that's the type of spirit that you need to have in order to pull forward excitement and stories and vision of where things are going. Right now, people are in a hunker down mode. There's $5-6 trillion on the sideline. This is not the time where people are, investing aggressively to get ahead of what might come. So spot on, I think, with regards to the numbers, right? They are what they are, right? Now, I'm of the opinion that we're going to come out of this. As long as we don't crash and burn and we don't wait too long because someone wants to protect their reputation. But I think that we're going to come out of this, and one way or another, interest rates will start to come down, and we will tend to look better, and numbers will come in, and we'll have more volume. And the core of how Tesla currently makes its profit will start to reignite. But we're not there yet. We haven't even had a single rate cut yet. We are still dealing with the same pressures that we were a year ago. Nothing has really changed. This whole Elon and his comp and all that was just yet another layer on top of all of this. But fundamentally, we don't have advancing growth. We don't have advancing margins. We don't have lower interest rates. And the consumers are done. They're maxed out. There's no savings. They're tapped out on credit card debt. We have record amount of bankruptcies this year, right now, compared to what we had in COVID, or when COVID happened, right? This whole everything's great and beautiful. It's a farce. Things aren't as good as they are. The All In podcast had a great segment on this. Take out government spending, take out government employment. We would be in a recession. GDP would be negative. We would not have this unemployment number. So, things look good, but things aren't that good. And Tesla is a company that relies on people being able to have access to debt. And right now, debt's extremely expensive, and that hurts them.
Right. I think Nico's coming to my side now.
Mm-hmm.
Look, this is a show me world. NVIDIA certainly showed everybody, wow, those numbers are just crazy. It looks like it's going to go for a while. I really don't believe that the catalysts which we see are going to be as impactful on the stock price as when the stock actually turns. And I think it's going to turn. Now, timing is, difficult at the best. The best we can say is really the end of 2025, things should be cooking. Whether it happens by the end of 25 or we have to see the first quarter of 26, I don't know. But sales of Optimus, energy sales are going to boom because they're building huge reserves in their energy sales figures. The energy sales figures don't reflect the full revenue of those energy sales. I wrote a piece on this. There's huge reserves building there. And so the out years on energy look fantastic. And then, China will come in. So energy is going to be great. And then if FSD comes in, then wow. Now, somebody pointed out that FSD is not going to happen overnight. I mean, Robotaxi, I should say. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to while to build that revenue. Uber took, 5 years? And so it could well take a little bit of time. But the market, I think if the numbers start coming in on the cars and the numbers start coming in, on the energy, and the numbers start coming, and we start seeing the new models start blossom, and Cybertruck reaches its production capacity, I think that will be a very exciting time. I want to, I lived through 2018, 2019. I enjoyed 2020. I think that I think we're going to see those times again.
So in 2018, it turned around dramatically because people realized the company's not going to go bankrupt. It was very touch and go, very close. And then B, they've got a factory that's going to mass produce the Model 3 global car. They thought this is before they even realized the Model Y was even going to be coming. Model 3 finally is going to be the car that's going to take over. Then that's where the growth story, right? Tesla's a growth company, going to get 50% growth, and that's where things jumped significantly. Finally, this company is going to be a car company. So for this transition, for this company from a car company to a robotics AI company, we're really at the beginning, right? Because you have to show me that you're a robotics AI company, and you've got to have the revenue to be able to do that. So that might be years away, right?
No, please.
Yeah. I was going to ask, this is a two-parter. Do you think that and this is for all of you, do you think that there is still an overhang from the second compensation plan? And if so, when does that end? How big is that overhang?
Look, the judge still has to rule based upon the new evidence that she's got. I saw CNBC's interview with this retired judge from the Delaware court who just waved her hand. She said, no, the judgment's going to stand. They're not going to reverse it. No way, no how. And you have to think that, she knows how this judge thinks, and this is just the way they think. So it looks to me like there will be a judgment that the original deal doesn't stand and that the attorneys get something like $2.5 billion. That would be my guess. And then the company's going to have to reinstate that deal in the Texas court. In the Texas venue or the Texas company. I don't think it will. And I think that was how this deal is going to go down. That's my sense of it. I don't think it'll impact the share price. I don't think it'll have any impact up or down on the share price.
I don't know if I feel like I haven't heard a clear answer on this. What is the escalation process here? So obviously they can appeal it. Obviously Delaware has its own Supreme Court, but this can never go to the federal Supreme Court. Am I correct?
Not unless somebody's civil rights have been impacted adversely by the state court. And that could, it could be, I don't know if it, so here I am. I'm not even US born, and I'm not an attorney. So I'm just.
Neither am I.
So we don't know. I doubt it highly. And I do think that if this judge rules in favor of Elon, in favor of the attorneys, then I think that the Supreme Court of Delaware's hardly like to overturn. They only overturn about 25% of all judgments, is my understanding. So it would be a reach for them to overturn it, except that, there's a very unusual circumstance of the second vote, which does offer some purchase for them if they wanted to overcome it. But, this is not good for Delaware. If they don't realize the dangers of what they've done to their own future, then more fool they. It's not good for them.
I mean, if anything, they could use this to spin the narrative.
Yeah.
Delaware, we listen to shareholders. The shareholders have spoken, and we are a shareholder first state, right? I mean, you could easily spin this to a marketing campaign.
But to listen to this judge, she said quite the opposite. She said functionally, the shareholders don't know anything. We know. We're telling them this is how it's going to be. I mean, you should listen to this lady. I mean, it was. I had to check my hearing aids. It was pretty serious.
Yeah. Well, Herbert, going back to your initial question about getting to 420, I don't really think that's important, because I think we all think it's going to get there. Nobody here thinks it's not. Yeah. I think really is, when do we think we start to see Robotaxi network come out? When do we start to see humanoids? When do we start to get adoption, revenue, and how this scales out? Will it be China first? Not. I think getting those questions answered and realized is why again, I say it could happen beforehand, but even if it doesn't, who cares? Like, to Larry's point, we're 12 to 18 months away. I think we're all kind of in that same ball camp. We're going to blink and it's going to be past that, right? Whereas we actually have confidence in that at this point. I would say a year ago, before 12 came out, I was saying, I'm pretty sure they can solve this. Now it's beyond clear. Like, it's so obvious if you drive FSD 12. Like, it's just abundantly clear that this is essentially solved. Still a lot of work to do, but they've got it. Like, you see it, you got the final puzzle piece to put together. Now we got to think about infrastructure scales out. How does this look like? How do we get safe? How do we apply QA to this to make sure that everything is done efficiently, but at the same time, we don't want too much red tape, and and how do we deal with jurisdictions? And I think that's really what we need to get to and have realization to get more aspirational when it comes to the stock price. Right. The numbers will come, but we just need to understand what's the development look like. And again, I've said this a few times. This was what really dismayed me about the questions asked during the shareholder meeting. I wish somebody would have asked Elon, like, how do you see this network rolling out? Right? How do we maintain the vehicles, when they need to be charged and clean? Like, have you put any thought to that and just let him riff? I'm so curious to hear how he thinks about this.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, there are a lot of questions about Robotaxi and how they're going to operate. I know that Herbert and I have debated them at length. He's wrong, of course, but
sure. We'll see. Okay, so anything you heard at the conference, at the annual shareholder meeting, that was them, first of all, thanking the retail shareholders for standing up. That was them reaffirming the 2018 plan, or their path that way. Are we going to start hearing the next the 10-year plan for Elon. And when we do, when do you guys think that will come out? Is that something that might take a year or two until all these legal things are solved? Could it come even sooner?
It's going to have to wait until after we've got, I think, this one solved and known, is because if this goes back to zero, the next one needs to be
Well,
commensurate.
why is that though, right? So they've already made the move to Texas. They can have dual class shares. They can then say, Elon, you're going to have 25% control. Here's how. And then they can go ahead and offer him the brand new package while they're waiting for this one to be resolved.
Herbert, it's optics. The lawyers don't want to
I
go
agree
in
with
front
that
of
as
the
well.
judge. They don't want to go in front of the judge, and the judge say to them, "You're here making all these statements, but you go back to Texas." And the lawyers said to the judge, "Don't worry about the move to Texas. We are going to finish this here in front of you." They said that to her. Now, if they actually, put out a new thing in Texas, she's going to be miffed. So I think they must let this play out. The optics would be terrible if they, and it would complicate the case. All the good things about what's happened with the vote in presenting the situation to the Delaware court, and more importantly to the appeals court of Delaware, all of that would be negated.
So when do you think that might happen? A year from now, 2 years from now?
Yes.
So you're not going to hear Elon's new comp plan till 2 years from now.
I think
Whenever it's settled, whenever there is, the ink is dry on the current comp, is my guess, and really not sooner is my strong belief.
because the new plan is going to have to be dependent upon whether the old plan exists or doesn't exist. Because if the old plan gets wiped away, then the new plan is going to have to make up for it. Or maybe they'll just say, we'll deal with that later. You know what? I don't know.
So I'm in agreement where we need to see how this resolves, which I think we'll know shortly here, like what happens with the judge. So I think Master Plan 4 is going to come out the day that we know. Like if things get vindicated, shareholders second round ratifying this, gets approved. Delaware sees, or the Delaware judge, finds some rationale, and everything goes the way we want it to go. I would almost bet you that it comes out that day, because that is going to be, I think we all agree, probably what the new comp plan is going to be based off of. And then again, to Larry's point, let's say that Delaware just completely screws all us shareholders over. Well, all right. Well, now in Texas, we know how to fold in the new comp to do right by Elon. And we probably want to do that sooner than later, because we all just voted for that comp plan. So they know they have the votes. So you don't want to, you don't know what tomorrow's going to hold. But right now you got the votes in hand. So I think they would want to move sooner than later, which might be a reason that they end up not appealing it at all. I don't know.
No, they'll appeal.
You think so?
Yeah. But the only thing I would say about what you just said is that I doubt very much that Master Plan 4 will contain any financial goals. They'll contain numbers of what they think the market is in terms of AI, and what the market is in terms of robotics. And I think that's what it's all about, just the scope of the market in this new world, and what's going to happen to the human. What are we going to be doing? No, let me rephrase it. What are you all going to be doing? I don't think I'm going to be around, but how do humans work in the new world? What do we do? What are anyway, that's what I think Master Plan 4 is all about.
I think we'll still do meet and greets, but we'll spell it MEAT, because we're not robots. I think it'll be an opportunity for people to get out and actually meet each other and do things. And I tell you, if I was to be starting a channel today, I would be deeply concerned that I would be too easily replaced by AI. But fortunately, I've convince enough people that I'm real, that they actually enjoy spending time with me. And so I think I would just travel around and do what I do now, but for fun instead of stress.
In other words, you'll live my life.
Enjoying
I
life.
think you've got it sorted out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
I think it'll be. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Finish your thought. Yeah.
I was just gonna say, I'm not in the camp where I think that we're all gonna be rendered useless. I think that humanoids will be able to do essentially every task, given enough time and scale and training. But I think it'll be a long time before humanoids have the empathy, the EQ, the soul of a human. Larry, if I'm in a hospital bed and you come up to me, like, how to talk to me to be empathetic, and you can, like, there's just something about a human touching another human to say, like, hey, I'm here for you. Like, there's lots of stuff. If you're in sales, like, talking to someone and engaging with them, understanding their pain and that they're trying to advance in their job as well, and you can't sacrifice this and the risk they're taking to lean in with you. Like, there's all kinds of things that are jobs that require the human emotion and intimacy.
I agree 100%. But right now, across the world, the human race spends, roughly a third of their lives employed in roles, the vast majority of them in roles that could be replaced by a humanoid robot.
Yeah.
So we're looking at some, this massive revolution, such as we haven't seen since the Industrial Revolution, and perhaps more profound than the Industrial Revolution. And the Industrial Revolution certainly led to massive changes, not the least of which was the most terrible wars that the world has ever seen. So there's a whole lot of open questions, but that's the subject for another day.
Okay. So what we talked about today is the question, when is Tesla stock going to get back up to its all-time high, let's say around $420? The panel here said that it won't happen until you've got your margins and earnings and revenue back to, when it was at $300. It was because the forecast for earnings was double what it was today. Till that happens. But everybody here kind of agreed that by next year, by the mid of next year, the future year will look like we're going to get back to that high growth, high margin space. There are possibly a couple things that could make the stock jump as catalysts. One example we talked about was licensing with another automaker for FSD. So despite the story stock of bots and the FSD, these things would need to translate to real revenue. There's a debate there that some of us had, and to see which one would happen earlier. But the funny thing is, most of us agreed that by mid next year, it's like 1 year from now. So I think that nobody here is trying to say it's going to happen next month or it's going to happen 2 months from now. A year, 2 years, it's perfectly fine. Thank you guys. Appreciate your joining us. We'll do this every Wednesday. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks all.